your sword, but nothing's changing. Have you ever stopped to ask if you're even fighting the right enemy? One of the enemy's most effective strategies isn't to overpower you, it's to distract you, because as long as you're busy fighting shadows, you'll never strike at the real stronghold. And the first shocking sign you're in the wrong battle is exhaustion with no breakthrough. Because spiritual warfare that is divinely assigned always produces fruit, but when you're drained, discouraged, and seeing no spiritual shift, it's often a warning that you're chasing what looks like the problem, not what is the problem. Ephesians 6:12 reminds you that your fight isn't against flesh and blood, but principalities and spiritual forces. So if your energy is being wasted on people, opinions, or even your own emotions, you've already lost focus. The second sign is constant confusion, because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's peace. And when you're constantly circling the same mountain of uncertainty, it's usually because you've mistaken your feelings for discernment. And instead of hearing from God, you're reacting to noise, which leads you to battle temporary symptoms instead of eternal root causes. Third, if you find yourself trying to control everything, relationships, timing, outcomes, that's not warfare. That's fear disguised as strategy. And it's a sure sign that you've taken the battle out of God's hands and into your own, which always invites unnecessary torment. Because the moment you stop trusting His sovereignty, you start carrying a weight you were never built to bear. Proverbs 3:5 says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. But when you're fighting battles through logic instead of revelation, you'll wear armor God never asked you to put on. Fourth, if your prayer life feels performative but powerless, that's not intercession, it's frustration. And when your words feel loud but your spirit feels dry, it's because you've been fighting for something God already told you to surrender. And like Saul before his fall, you've mistaken motion for obedience, action for alignment. But 1 Samuel 15:22 reminds us that obedience is better than sacrifice, so fighting hard in the wrong direction still leads to disobedience, even if it looks spiritual. The fifth and most dangerous sign is when pride creeps in secretly. When you start believing it's your prayers, your fasting, your discernment that's holding everything together, you've entered a hidden battle with self. And that's when the enemy sits back and lets you self-destruct under the illusion of spiritual strength. When in reality, the real war is your refusal to let God be God. Some of the toughest seasons you're in aren't attacks, they're resistance. God resisting your efforts to control what He's already authored. And the longer you fight where He hasn't called you, the more delayed your destiny becomes. Not because the promise has changed, but because you're entangled in wars of your own design, chasing affirmation, revenge, or validation from people God already told you to walk away from. David didn't defeat Goliath with Saul's armor. He won because he stayed in his lane, used what God gave him, and fought the right battle at the right time with the right authority. When you fight the wrong fight, you lose, even when you win, because you end up drained, bitter, and further from the promise than when you started. So here's the truth. You don't need to fight every battle, just the ones God called you to. And the rest, you need to release. Because if the enemy can't destroy you, he'll distract you into fighting battles that feel urgent, but are spiritually irrelevant. And the cost of distraction is delayed purpose. This is your warning. Don't let spiritual activity fool you into believing you're spiritually aligned. Because Satan doesn't fear a busy Christian. He fears a discerning one. The kind who knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to march and when to wait, when to intercede and when to rest. Because rest itself is a weapon when it's done in faith. Your victory isn't just in what you fight, it's in what you refuse to waste your energy on. And right now, some of you are one active release away from clarity, one surrender away from strength, one pivot away from real power. And the question isn't, are you fighting? It's, are you fighting right? Because heaven doesn't honor motion, it honors obedience. And sometimes, the most anointed thing you can do is lay your weapons down and ask God, what fight have you really called me to? And when you do, you'll realize that the real victory was never in your striving. It was always in your surrender.